You're watching This Week in Space with Miles O'Brien. Brought to you by Binary Space. Reliable space systems.
Hello and welcome. I gotta admit it, I'm getting a little tired of launching the program with the latest skirmish in the war over the Obama NASA space budget. It's not that I don't care, but frankly, I'm more interested in learning something new about the cosmos, not Congress. How about you? So this week, I'm starting off in the orbit of the moon, where a high-tech divining rod built by the U.S., hitching a ride on the Indian spacecraft Chandrayaan-1, has found there is a whole lot of water ice down there. And here's the proof. NASA's mini-SAR radar is the instrument, and it found the ice in more than 40 small craters where the sun don't shine. So how much ice is there? 1.3 trillion pounds, 600 million metric tons. Another reason to visit the moon. It will be easy to keep the beer cold. Tempting as a toga party in 1/6 gravity might be, we're not heading back to the moon anytime soon, and the second man to leave footprints up there is just fine with that. Buzz Aldrin is pushing a plan called Unified Space Vision, which earmarks money to build a heavy-lift booster and a craft that would only operate in space called the Exploration Module, or XM. He's serious about XM. The XM will be built on leftover parts left over from the station construction and carried up by shuttles. Oh yeah, he wants to fly several more shuttle missions. I talked with Buzz via Skype a short time ago. Buzz Aldrin, thanks again for being with us on This Week in Space. This notion of an XM capsule, an interplanetary vehicle, really goes back to the von Braun paradigm, this idea of building things in space to get farther out into space. How do you think this will help NASA move into space quicker?
Well, I think we need a modular approach. We tried to build things in space, and it's complicated to do. What we really need is a specialized craft going different places. What made Apollo work is called Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, but really it's two specialized vehicles, one going from Earth to the moon and back, another one, once you're at the moon, it makes a landing and back up again. So what we need is a way to get into space, and then once in space, to move outward with long duration flights. And you really can't do that with the room that you need for artificial gravity, radiation protection, and just all the protection that you need to move around for people to engage in really long duration. You can't do that with the re-entry vehicle, and I'm not sure that you can do it with something that I would call a space taxi. And I think we can derive those from the Orion spacecraft that just doesn't go up into the atmosphere and into orbit and back down again. We put it up there, and it now is a small aero capture long duration. We combine that with a bigger exploration module that has all the life support, and we send the two of them off there for redundancy. They accomplish what they're going to at the destination, and then the two of them come back and they both aero capture. They're a specialized place-to-place vehicles, and now we have vehicles that take the crew up, commercial vehicles, runway landers hopefully, that take the people up. They get into these two spacecraft with the appropriate propulsion, go where they're going to go, use the taxi, and maybe land the exploration module somewhere where we can go and visit it, like Phobos, and then come back and have two of those exploration modules. But the key is to specialize vehicles that are doing things up and down, commercial vehicles from the surface of the Earth to orbit, and then from orbit to orbit, and then back to orbit again. We don't want to use propulsion. We got a great atmosphere, and we can aero capture on return. That's the key to making the strategy that people have known about for a long time. You go somewhere, you come back, you don't necessarily have to come direct from Mars and make a direct entry and land in the ocean with all the recovery, and don't have to use that spacecraft with all the launch abort material on it. You specialize two spacecraft, one a small taxi and one an exploration module that's much larger. We test out the equipment at the space station in a test bed. And we need to start doing that right away. Then we have a prototype at the space station. Then we start testing this exploration module with the space taxi. A modified Orion that gets launched unmanned into Earth orbit and then tested as an aerocapture space taxi that goes along with the exploration module there and back. Any questions?
Buzz, it sounds interesting. I think the big question would be, given the budget parameters that are out there right now, is it possible to do this? You know, there's only so much money in this budget. NASA did get an increase, but to do what you're talking about would cost more.
Well, we need something like the HAB module that was never launched. It was canceled. We could put the long duration equipment in that, put it up at the space station as soon as possible. We need a launch vehicle that can put these things up, and shuttle-derived launch vehicle is the best way to do that, to keep the workforce, keep a continuity. I would like to see more shuttle missions, shuttle stretched, shuttle missions added. If we can't do that, we can't do that. But let's have a quick shuttle-derived launch vehicle so we don't terminate the workforce and then start all over again defining what a heavy lift vehicle is. We all know that. We've studied heavy lift vehicles for a long time. We need something that uses what we have and grows it gradually to be the kind of heavy lift vehicle we want. We got 4 segment solids and we got an ET. We can work with those components, either a side mount or an inline launch, eventually replacing the solids with liquid expendables, then the liquid reusable boosters, small, medium, large, then a big can core stage that goes into orbit. We've got all that material into orbit in cylindrical shape. We can use it to build solar power satellites or use it for habitation.
All right, Buzz Aldrin, thanks very much. I'm going to have you back a little later in the program. We'll ask you about Dance with the Stars. Thanks very much.
Okay, my pleasure.
A lot of others are looking to get more funding for NASA. Kay Bailey Hutchison, the senator from Shuttleland, has ginned up a bill that would add $1.3 billion more to the Obama NASA budget. The money would be used to fly the shuttle fleet indefinitely. All of this is grist for the so-called Plan B team that is working on a compromise plan inside NASA that might bridge the gap between the White House and the Hill. Enough said. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, the serious business of launching a shuttle safely moves on in earnest and in slow motion at the Cape. Twist correspondent David Waters was there the other day as Discovery and her entourage made her way to the pad like a herd of turtles. David Waters joining us from the Cape. I'm stuck in a Starbucks in Washington, and he's been up all night. I could probably get him a grande latte, and he'd be pretty happy about now. How did it go, David?
Miles, it went really well, and I think all the crawler transporter folks would surely like some of that coffee there, because it's a long time for them to do this process. They get up late Tuesday, that's when they began this whole process, and just before Wednesday morning at midnight, they started rolling the space shuttle out of that vehicle assembly building just behind me, just over 3 miles to the space shuttle launch pad, and it's a process that takes a full 6 hours. The reason for that is well, it's such a large and heavy vehicle, it takes a while to get there. The top speed, 1 mile an hour, meaning a lot of the time it actually goes slower. There's an asphalt road that is just outside the vehicle assembly building, and when the space shuttle gets there, they have to slow it down so that it doesn't vibrate too much on top of the transporter. That speed, 0.3 miles an hour, but a long journey, and now the space shuttle is at the launch pad where it'll be prepped for its launch next month, Miles.
It moves slowly, but the mileage is not so good, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. 42 feet. It can get 42 feet per gallon. I think that's something like your SUV there, right?
Pretty close, pretty close. You know, a lot of people don't know that they actually flew in River Rock from Tennessee for that crawler way, and as the crawler goes over it, it's designed literally to crush the rocks. And you were talking about going over the asphalt, that there's not enough give in the asphalt. It's an amazing thing. I know you've been on the inside of it. Try to describe it for people.
Well, let me go back to some pictures that I've got here from United Space Alliance. Back when I was working there, I got to ride on the Space Shuttle crawler transporter. This was with Atlantis, and you're up right by the tail in this shot here. You can actually see the tail vibrating as the crawler transporter goes out. Now, the reason it's vibrating, it's moving, it's on the road. It would be like driving something on the top of your car, but much more stabilized system here. So they have a set of leveling jacks that keeps the space shuttle level, and when it starts vibrating to a certain amount, they have to slow the crawler transporter down. As he said, when they get to that asphalt road, they have to slow it down so it doesn't bounce too much. But then when it gets to those rocks, it's amazing. When you look at the rocks after the crawler transporter goes over it, a lot of them are shattered and crushed, and a lot of the times they have to replace it. Every so often they have to fly in more rocks to lay it down so the next space shuttle can roll over it.
There's not a lot of good river rock in Florida, that's for sure. Tell us a little bit about the birds. We've had another bird attack on a shuttle. It just so happens Discovery seems to be susceptible to this. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, it looks like Discovery had some birds go after it inside the vehicle assembly building. At least that's possibly where it happened. But the external tank got some birds that pecked it. No real significant damage. The repairs were done inside the vehicle assembly building with a technique they called sand and blend. They sand off the area that had the damage on the external tank's orange foam, and then they blend it in with the rest of the surface. So they were able to get all those repairs done. But you mentioned that this has happened before with Discovery. Yes, 15 years ago, woodpeckers went after a space shuttle external tank. And in that case, it was much worse, Miles. They had to roll a shuttle off the launch pad and delay a launch before they could get that repaired.
And I remember we made a lot of fun of it at the time, but that was before we lost Columbia and before we really fully appreciated how dangerous falling foam is. I assume they're being very careful about this.
They are, and they looked at this and they realized, they said, look, it's not significant damage. We were able to just blend that away. This is not anything that we saw like 15 years ago where there were some 70 holes or 70 pecks that these birds took out. In this case, it was something that was found while the shuttle was inside the vehicle assembly building, repaired there, and they're going to do some minor touch-ups there at the launch pad, but they believe no real impact here from that.
All right, so Discovery's on its way to the pad. The launch is still set for April 5th. Tell us a little bit about the mission that lies ahead.
Well, this mission will take up the multi-purpose logistics module. That is essentially the moving van for the space station. It's taken up there. Some science racks will be unloaded. Then it will be used to haul the trash back. They take all the stuff they don't need on the space station anymore, from everything from science experiments that are going to be taken down to be studied to the trash that needs to be taken out. They'll load that up inside the multi-purpose logistics module. In this case, this one is called Leonardo, and they'll fly that back down when the shuttle lands. They're also taking up an ammonia coolant tank that's used for cooling on the space station that will be installed, and there will be 3 spacewalks on this mission that lifts off coming up on the 5th of next month.
I got to say, probably the most overeducated trash haulers on or off the planet would be on Discovery.
I would say so, Miles. They're movers, they're trash haulers, they do it all. They have to do everything when they're astronauts.
All right, the versatility of the space shuttle crew and the space shuttle program reinforced in its waning days once again. David Waters at the Cape, thanks very much.
Thanks, Miles.
It's the aerospace equivalent of the Stanley Cup, the Heisman Trophy, or the Green Blazer at Augusta, and it has just been bestowed on the International Space Station team. The National Aeronautic Association in Washington awarding the prestigious Collier Trophy to the orbiting outpost. The trophy is named for Robert J. Collier of Collier's Magazine fame, which in 1952 and 53 published a seminal illustrated series that popularized the exploration of space. Collier created the trophy in 1910 to recognize the greatest achievements in aviation and aeronautics. ISS joins Glenn Curtiss, Orville Wright, both Rutan brothers, and Chuck Yeager in the Collier Club. Rarefied air indeed. Nice work, station. A secret military spacecraft is marching toward a mid-April launch at Cape Canaveral. The X-37B, which looks like a model rocket builder's attempt to knock off the shuttle, will be doing, well, secret stuff for the Air Force. The unmanned reusable will ride to orbit on the shoulders of an Atlas V rocket. After it's done doing whatever it will be doing, it will return for a landing at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. But we aren't sure when. It's a secret. Also from our Cape Canaveral launch desk, word that the not-so-secret Falcon 9 program had a good day the other day. They staged a so-called wet dress rehearsal, which doesn't mean they sang show tunes in the rain. No, it means they fueled up the rocket, did a countdown, and had the smoothest one to date, according to their launch director. SpaceX founder Elon Musk declared it a good day. The next milestone, a so-called hot fire test, which means they'll count down and light the engines for 3.5 seconds. The inaugural launch is set for no earlier than March 22nd.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
There she goes. NASA launched the 15th Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite, or GOES-P, the other day. The satellite got a ride on a Delta IV rocket. The National Weather Service uses GOES to monitor and forecast the weather, and researchers use it to better understand climate change. So whether all goes well is important. ESA's Mars Express spacecraft buzzed the Martian moon of Phobos the other night at an altitude of only 67 kilometers or 41 miles. And look at what it saw. Scientists believe Phobos is little more than a pile of rubble glommed together with some substantial voids, maybe as much as 25 or 30%. They are trying to get precise measurements of Phobos's gravity field. It's likely Phobos formed after Mars and will eventually be pulled apart as the planet pulls it closer. Rubble to rubble, I guess. The Stardust spacecraft, which made history by sending some comet bits back to Earth 4 years ago, is looking for some more work. And so it will swing by the comet Tempel 1 on Valentine's Day next year. Now, you forgive Tempel 1 if it ducks when it sees Stardust coming, as the last spacecraft we sent its way in 2005, Deep Impact, augured right into the comet to see what it's made of. Stardust will just fly by, however, to see how the Tempel 1 has recovered. Coming up, we'll do another two-step with Buzz Aldrin and ask him about his gig on Dancing with the Stars. The big question, will he do the moonwalk? And it turns out Buzz has a lot in common with Jennifer Aniston. And you probably do too. Stay with us. Welcome back. We sure do live on a pretty planet, don't we? And you can savor that fact by clicking your way to the Flickr feed for NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. There you will find a series of the most detailed high-res images of our little globe ever captured. Most of the images stitched together to make this stunning view were captured by NASA's Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer, or MODIS, which is bolted onto the Terra satellite in low Earth orbit. We may be a knockout of a planet, but we have issues. Check out these images from the European Space Agency's ENVISAT satellite. It shows a 97-kilometer, 60-mile-long iceberg hitting the Mertz Glacier tongue in Antarctica on February 10th. This made a new iceberg. The pair have drifted into an area where dense, cold bottom water is normally formed. The bergs could upset that process. And back to that Flickr shot now. In case you hadn't noticed, the days on Earth got a little shorter since our last program, by 1.26 microseconds. The magnitude 8.8 quake in Chile shifted enough mass to slightly change the rate at which the world turns. A millisecond is a millionth of a second, so no wonder I'm not getting anything more done each day. As long as we're marking time here, a global team of researchers has narrowed down the age of the universe to 13.75 billion years, give or take 170 million. The team, led by Stanford's Kavli Institute for Particle Astrophysics and Cosmology, used a technique called gravitational lensing to get a better handle on how far away distant galaxies are. They measure the light from the distant object as it passes through a closer galaxy, taking more than one path. Measuring the different arrival times of the light is the secret sauce to making more precise measurements of distance and thus time. Time is running out for the Space Shuttle program, which means a lot of people who work on it will soon be getting pink slips. This will have a huge impact in the place they call the Space Coast. And a surprising number of people outside the space program will likely be affected. Twist correspondent David Waters has more.
Good. Do you have one today? Come right in.
For 3.5 years, Causeway Diner has served the lunch crowd. Make that the launch crowd. The restaurant is one of the closest to Kennedy Space Center.
Can I get you guys any dessert or anything?
Causeway Diner sees about 170 people a day.
We're busy.
Thanks. But a new independent job study says there are about 23,000 people in and around the Kennedy Space Center that will lose their jobs. That's 9,000 workers at the Space Center and about 14,000 people who don't work in the space industry, just indirect jobs at places like this at Causeway Diner. Tough times ahead for places like this. They'll have layoffs of their own or potentially even worse.
There's always a chance to go out of business. I would definitely have to modify my mode of operations. Right now, I currently have over 20 employees. I'm not going to need 20 employees if there's not all that amount of people in here.
Without the jobs here from the space program, it's going to trickle down to every facet of whether it be a plumber, concrete worker.
Well, the people that work at the Kennedy Space Center, they make a decent salary. They make very good money. They come to the diner, they eat. They go to the vet. They take their animals to the vet. They go to supermarkets. They get their hair done. They use a painter. They'll use a carpenter. they'll buy tile from the tile guy down the block.
Thank you, folks. Have a great day.
14,000 people like that are expected to also be laid off when space workers move away. The new job loss estimates were part of an independent study commissioned by Brevard Workforce, a group that is trying to help shuttle workers find jobs.
I think that will be very traumatic for our area because when you look at our unemployment rate right now, it's at 12.1%. That's about 33,000 people unemployed right now. You're going to add another 23,000 people on top of that? This has to be traumatic.
Now the AFL-CIOs made jobs our top priority.
The reality was evident at this recent Save Jobs rally just outside the Space Center in Titusville. Workers are blunt that their job number could be up soon. Tom LaForge has been helping build the Constellation program's mobile launcher platform. That part of his job, or the whole thing, could go away if Congress okays the Constellation cuts.
I'll have to go somewhere else to sustain enough income to where I can have at least a normalcy in life.
That keeps Causeway Diner's owner planning ahead. She says when times get tough after the last shuttle launch, she plans to scale back from 20-some employees to just her family, hoping her business can survive when workers who launch these have to leave to launch new careers instead.
David Waters on the Space Coast, thank you. And more proof things are winding down for the shuttle program. The man who runs the prime shuttle contractor, United Space Alliance, Dick Covey, is calling it a day, retiring effective March 26th. Covey flew on 4 shuttle missions. He's been at USA since 2006. He's been CEO for 2.5 years. A successor is in work, as they say. Superstition holds that death comes in threes. Well, sadly, that turned out to be true since our last episode. 3 great members of the space community are now among the stars.
I said we are getting in sync with the...
Aaron Cohen, the legendary former director of the Johnson Space Center, died at the age of 79. He joined NASA in 1963 and worked as a chief systems engineer for the Apollo Command and Service Module and Lunar Module, then manager of the Space Shuttle program. He was running JSC in the aftermath of the Chandra disaster. NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden was in the astronaut office at the time and said this week Cohen provided the critical and calm guidance needed to successfully recover from the Challenger accident. And the man responsible for some of the most iconic images of the moon race has moved on to another orbit as well. Bill Taub was NASA's first senior photographer and covered every event from Mercury through Apollo. Here he is getting a blood test so that he could be cleared to be near the quarantined Apollo 11 crew before launch. Taub told an interviewer once, "I had the privilege to be there to record it, and I made sure I recorded it to the best of my ability because I have a sense of history." Well, we can all be glad he had that front row seat. And the brilliant space artist Robert McCall has left us as well. McCall painted stunning grand visions of space exploration, which you've probably seen, including a huge mural at the National Air and Space Museum. Isaac Asimov called him the nearest thing we have to an artist in residence in outer space. McCall was 90. He was the artist that everyone figured would fly on the shuttle when the Civilians in Space program got started in the mid-'80s. Of course, Challenger ended that dream for him. I had the good fortune to spend some time with him and his wife Louise at their home in Arizona about 10 years ago. They were just fabulous and fun and young at heart. That's what happens when you pursue your passion with gusto. Robert McCall may be gone, but his vision for the future will live on forever. Here's an idea and an image that would get Bob McCall's creative juices and oil paint flowing. There's new evidence black holes don't just suck things in, they blow powerful winds out. NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory made its finding when scientists pointed its high-energy transmission grating spectrometer at the galaxy known as NGC 1068. Turns out the supermassive black hole in that neck of the woods sends out a wind at a rate of 1,000,000 miles an hour, making it a Category 50,000 storm. Must be climate change. Now let's move over to the Orion constellation. And I'm not talking about canceled rockets and spacecraft. I am talking about a place in the cosmos where they aren't worried about NASA's budget. The European Southern Observatory aimed at Orion and got this stunning shot of a little nebula. The gas glows from the light in the young stars that are inside. Actress Jennifer Aniston, now there's a name you might not have expected to hear on this program, is apparently enamored with the stars. And we're not talking about the red carpet variety. The site celebritygossip.net, what, you don't have the RSS feed for that one? says Aniston just popped for a $3,000 Celestron telescope. A source tells the site Jennifer is always looking for ways to expand her horizons. Or maybe she's pointing big lenses at a star, trying to understand what it's like to be a paparazzo. Well, he may be 80 and have 2 left feet, but you could never accuse the second man who walked on the moon of shying away from a challenge or the limelight. Buzz Aldrin will be on Dancing with the Stars this season. He's paired with a 27-year-old professional dancer named Ashley Costa. The season premieres March 22nd, and I asked Buzz the question of them all. Got to ask you about Dancing with the Stars. And of course, the big question everybody is asking, and it's kind of trite, but it's going to be asked a million times. You going to do the moonwalk?
Yeah, except it's backwards. It's Michael Jackson's moonwalk. I don't know where he got that. We always could look forward out of our visor, so we moved forward. We didn't shuffle backward, but I'll do the best I can of some kind of a rendition. And between me and my beautiful partner, I don't think there'll be any question as to what we're doing.
I got to ask you, Buzz, how much dancing have you done?
Well, I kind of watch from the sidelines while Lois shows her stuff. This requires a lot of memory of the steps and putting all the different ones together. You know, my memory span for recent activities, I can remember what I did in high school, but the last dance step, it tends to slip. Well, it's all coming together, and it's going to look beautiful, I'll tell you. Really, I'm enthusiastic.
Why are you doing it?
I'm doing it to get the enthusiasm that I think you've already seen of people that know that there's somebody who's at 80 years old and he's still very capable of thinking, of memorizing stuff, and he has a good memory about what made a good space program. And now I can sort of go between the administration's point of view and the Congress's point of view, and sort out the kind of compromises we need. We just started off the vision for space exploration in the wrong foot with 2 boosters instead of 1. And so that got us in a lot of trouble, and now it's time to recover. If you start out with your right foot and you're supposed to be starting out with your left foot in dancing, well, we did that in the space program. We started out left-footed with the wrong vision for space exploration. We now need a unified space vision, and it's many steps, many dance steps. Unified means exploration, development, science, commercial, and strategic security. And you put all those things together and you've got a unified space vision.
It sounds like a minuet. Well, we look forward, Buzz, to seeing you on the program and seeing you as you continue your discussions on a possible compromise for the vision.
I took a quick vacation to do a little bit for 30 Rock yesterday, so you'll be seeing that sometime in May.
All right. I want to be like you when I'm 80. All right. Buzz Aldrin, thanks as always.
You betcha.
It's time for us to waltz on out of here. Thanks for being with us. Before we go, a quick look at the mailbag. Brian Watson took issue with some things I said to the Senate Commerce Committee. It occurred to me, he wrote, that your Senate testimony analogy of the high school athlete reliving his glory days was really incorrect and unfair. For all 3 of these post-Apollo programs, the team did not rest on their high school laurels at all. To use your analogy, they went to college, they looked at the plays that won them games in high school and strengthened them, and they ditched the plays that didn't work. Victor Malero writes, great show, the interviews are the best part. And this one, the general populace is ignorant, actually, of how little a percentage of federal discretionary spending NASA gets. The public isn't going to blink if NASA funding went up a few billion a year. That comes from Cessna Driver, left on our new, slick YouTube show page. You can get there by going to spaceflightnow.com/twist. If you're so inclined, hit the PayPal button while you're there. Send us a few bucks. We're still scrambling. We sure would love it if you'd give us a small recurring payment. Easy on your wallet, good for our cash flow. Special thanks this week to Binary Space for their advertising support. By the way, our email is twist@spaceflightnow.com, and our blog is milesobrien.com. Next week, the last Hubble repair mission in 3D, vividly. We'll take you to the red carpet premiere at the National Air and Space Museum, and we'll tell you about the Hubble Space Telescope that has rewritten textbooks and rewritten its own history, and is now available in IMAX 3D. That's coming up on the next edition of This Week in Space. We'll see you then.